welcome to another episode of Ministry Matters That Matter. I'm coming to you from Marshfield, Missouri, or Missouri. I have found out that they pronounce it both ways. Even asked at services tonight. Two ladies sitting by each other pronounced it differently. But we are here. They have had a missions emphasis day, and a number of us from Latin American missions have been here. And so I've got a couple of my friends on today's podcast. So I want us to focus on what can help us to do a better job, be more effective in mission work in foreign countries, countries outside of the U.S., and of course, missions is something we can do in the United States, but our focus in this episode will be outside of the United States. So thank you for joining me for another episode of Ministry Matters That Matter. So to begin with, why don't you two guys introduce yourselves and tell us where you live and what is your responsibility with Latin American missions?
My name's Cary Gillis. I live in Valdosta, Georgia. I'm Director of Latin American Missions. And so I handle a lot of day-to-day stuff. I keep the machine going, and responsible for a few campaigns in the summer, and getting congregations enlisted in the work.
Good.
And keeping them informed with what we're doing with the school and campaigns and whatnot, and how to help them take more ownership in missions.
Okay, good.
My name is John Farber. I'm the coordinator of medical missions for Latin American Missions, and I coordinate two medical campaigns, one in Honduras and one in Peru each year. And I strategize with the local preachers on evangelism techniques and strategies for the areas and the countries that we work in.
Okay. Well, we have a responsibility to make disciples of all nations. So as you think about taking the message outside of the U.S., specifically, I want you to share with me about if individuals from the U.S. participate in campaigns, whether it's their congregation doing a campaign or a mission trip, or they go with a group, an eclectic group of folks from multiple churches, etc., whatever takes them, what are the benefits to a congregation in the U.S. when their members participate in a campaign in a foreign country? So why don't you start us out?
So one of the main benefits is they see how the church is supposed to operate on a daily basis. And what I mean by that is every single person that comes on a campaign is given a job, and they do that job, and they realize that if they don't do that job, then it makes the rest of the campaign suffer. And so they get to see that when everybody is doing their job and doing it to the best of their ability, it creates all of these open doors. It creates all these open hearts for people to hear the gospel more effectively.
Well, one of the things that I've witnessed is that, like I said tonight, the average person in the pew, when they are going through their day-to-day Christian life, they just kind of feel like they don't matter. You get into a campaign situation, and all of a sudden you're like, I didn't realize how valuable I was. As long as I know what I'm supposed to do, and I know what we're working towards, that's just so empowering to somebody. It makes them alive. It makes them feel like, oh, I matter now, and they realize my life is a whole lot more than just showing up for the status quo. Is I can bring value, even if it's in a small way, a way that might seem insignificant, but in the big picture, it's invaluable.
I think about a comment you made tonight about the mentoring that takes place, where you have teams go out to do door knocking, to do actually Bible studies. And so you pair an experienced person who has led a lot of studies with those who haven't, so they're able to watch, and then they're able to turn around and do their own study. So there's a level of experience in mentoring that you're not always able to do, because you're doing studies all day, every day for 4 or 5 days. And so you just have some unique opportunities, I think, for mentoring.
Yeah, you're able to sit and just watch just how somebody does something. And it's just amazing how just a few hours of that totally transforms somebody's confidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. So let's think about the general idea of churches in the U.S. supporting works in other countries. And that comes in lots of shapes and fashions. It may be supporting a local preacher. It may be supporting a school. We work with the Bible School of the Americas, and others work with other schools. So what is a common mistake that you see churches making that are supporting our individuals? Because there are a lot of folks who give individually to works. What are some common mistakes you see that churches make when they're supporting work in another country? And what is a tip or two that you might share with churches and individuals when supporting works in other countries?
One of the things is that they're under this misconception that support or missions is just sending money in perpetuity. Instead of actually knowing who it is they're sending money to, having a relationship with them, visiting with them, setting goals with them, trying to help them mature, mentoring them. And like we were discussing earlier, it may take a decade or more to really start to show progress, but it's a matter of what are we actually working towards? What's our end goals rather than the goal of just helping them to exist. We need our goal needs to be to help them thrive and help them mature. That's not really that hard of a thing to do, but I've seen it's kind of the pattern. A lot of people just think, well, missions is just sending money, which is not. That's important, but to what end, right? To what end?
Yeah, I see all the time. I've had congregations or elders or ministers brag about, like, man, 45% of our budget goes to missions, and it's like pat on the back, and I'm like, okay, but of that 45% of the budget, how many of you know your preacher's middle name, or the guy that you're supporting, his wife's birthday, or how many kids that they have and what ages are they? Do they know, does the preacher you're supporting, do they know your elders? Have your elders been down and encouraged that preacher and taught him and continued his education? Have they gone to visit the members of that congregation? And it's got to be more of a partnership and a sisterhood than what I've seen a lot of congregations do. And so, I'm blessed that I get to work with several congregations that do this very well, where they'll go down and elders will go down every year. They'll visit with some of the members, or they'll go and visit every member of the congregation, and they'll specifically target some of the members who have fallen away. And they do this so well, and they do it every year. I mean, one that comes to mind, and I know he won't mind me mentioning, is the Paintsville Church of Christ in Paintsville, Kentucky. They go down to Peru every year and visit the congregation that they support, and they know each other, they laugh with each other, they commune with each other, they stay and have been a part of each other's families, and it is a really good message. And so the tips that I would give is that if you're going to support somebody, it's got to be a partnership and in a almost a marriage, because there's this misconception that missions is going to take 5 years, and in 5 years you're going to grow a congregation from 0 members to 100 members, and it's going to be self-supporting, and then they're going to start establishing elders, and it just doesn't work. It's never going to work that way. And so it just needs to be more of a partnership and a team effort, because in that way, helping that congregation helps your congregation. And you helping them makes your congregation better, because they see the growth, and that helps raise the expectation of your own congregation for there to be growth.
I think about the Graveyard congregation I worked with, and I assume they still have this philosophy, but basically they had a philosophy that they weren't going to support a work unless they went, or if they supported a work, they were going. It wasn't just going to be money, but that they were going to send people as well. Did you have a tip that you wanted to add or anything?
I was just going to say, I remember talking to a minister one time, just picking his brain, And he was kind of bragging that they had a pretty big budget. They supported like 25 different works. And I said, "Do y'all go anywhere?" And they said, "No." And I just thought that's emblematic of a kind of fundamental breakdown or misunderstanding in the cultural mindset in the church what missions means. So going and taking ownership, that it's like a spiritual injection of expectation and of an ownership of evangelism. It just goes hand in hand with evangelism. We're helping a congregation grow. Well, what are we doing to help them grow? Well, we're doing these things to help them grow. Is this the campaigns? Where are you doing things on the campaigns to help another place grow? You're not going to be able to help, but your members doing that at home because they're just in the habit of that.
Bring it back home.
Yeah.
And I can tell you also, just because we get to see both sides of it, like I said, Paintsville does a really good job, but I also see the effect that it has on preachers when a kind of supporting congregation doesn't do a good job. It's lonely. Mm-hmm. It's hard. And there is difficult places that they don't have, they may not even know the name of the congregation that supports them. They certainly have never met anybody from that congregation. They ask us and we, share some of what we know, but there's no teamwork, and it's hard on the preacher.
I think about Carlos Condolero, one of our graduates last year. He's from Mexico, left his nursing job to go to school, and now he's down in Uruguay. A culture totally different.
As far as I know, it's the only congregation.
And he knows no one down
in the country.
And so you just think about how valuable and important it is for the churches that support him to be there and the individuals that support him, because he is very much is alone. So let me ask you one more question. Think of what we just said about mistakes you see people making and suggestions related to supporting works in other countries. What are some mistakes you see and some suggestions for people who go on campaigns? And so when they go on a mission trip or campaign, what are some common mistakes that you see gringos, U.S. folks who go into the mission field mistake? And what suggestions do you have for those going on mission trips, or in the case of several that participate in this podcast, they're leading some of those?
Yeah.
So
I've got two that are kind of funny. So one is, I'm going to learn Spanish. I'm going to go home and I'm going to get on Duolingo or whatever, app that I can get. I'm going to learn the language. And it's comes from a good place. It's very heartfelt, and they want to communicate better. They want to do better. But I've even seen congregations that I know of one congregation that hired a Spanish teacher from their local community college to come and do all. And while it is great and all, you don't learn a language that way. You just don't. You've got to be in it. You've got to submerge yourself in it. You've got to speak it every day. It's just got to be part of your everyday life. So I think it's kind of comical when people tell me that, and I don't, discourage them from that. If you want to learn the language, but it's not as easy as it sounds. You can learn the words, but understanding and being able to communicate in the language takes submersion. The other one, and this one is a little trickier because, again, it comes from a good place, is taking mounds of candy and VBS supplies into this place and putting on almost a Broadway style production for a VBS in some of these little areas. While you may get a crowd of people to come and do, you've set that congregation up for failure because they can't sustain that. And once the entertainment leaves, the people leave. And so doing too much sometimes, going over the top and doing things can really not necessarily do more harm than good, but it's not sustainable. And so if it's not sustainable, then reconsider your strategy.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
I'm just thinking from what I've experienced. Like on the first campaigns that I went on, what I saw was evangelism was just kind of taken for granted that it would just kind of happen, that people just kind of knew what they were doing. And even preachers, like I mentioned tonight, even preachers, lots of preachers, they don't know what they're doing in evangelism. They know how to preach a sermon. Mm-hmm. And so that's so what I would say is one of the problems or mistakes is they just don't have a plan going in. there's too many things that are just assumed will happen automatically instead of saying, okay, what exactly are we going to do? How exactly are we going to make contacts with people? How exactly are we going to have Bible studies with people? How exactly are we going to keep records and follow up with people? Those things will happen automatically. But if you have a plan, then you go in, everybody knows what you're doing, and there's an efficiency to it, and it makes your work there not fall flat after you're gone. And so, and it's a matter of going there and setting up a congregation for success after you're gone, giving them some tools, giving them a plan, helping them and modeling it for them, rather than just thinking, well, he's a preacher and he speaks Spanish and he knows these neighbors and he knows what to do. And, it's funny, a lot of times the locals will go out to the evangelism teams, and my team leaders from the evangelism teams will come back, and a lot of times what they'll say is the local preacher, he's bulldozing, or he's cramping my stairs. What happens is you have these guys that there's kind of a brute force attack of evangelism, and a lot of times these guys don't know how to evangelize. They know how to preach maybe, but they don't really have a plan. They just think we need to go and tell them you need to be baptized, instead of having a plan for how you're going to initiate contact, what you're going to talk about, what questions you're going to have. And so having a plan for as much as you can plan for, and understanding then things aren't going to go exactly how you want them to go.
You got to be
able to roll with it. Yeah.
Have a plan and be willing to adapt.
I would even add on to basically combining our two comments is rather than trying to learn the language, learn evangelism and have that plan.
Yeah.
Spend that time rather than learning the language.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, again, not to discourage you from learning the language. It's just, it's a much more valuable skill to have in the field to be able to evangelize than it is to speak the language. We can have translators, but evangelism is so much more valuable.
And not only learn the culture. You will. I mean, I've always tried to learn language when I went on trips, but I have found if you'll learn all you can about the culture before and when you get there, it's just a different culture, and you can do something innocently and do a lot of damage because we don't take time to learn a little bit about the place we're going to. So if you got some tips, I know you kind of threw in a few. Anybody got some special tips? Somebody that's leading a campaign or going on a campaign?
Well, as a leader of a campaign, never take somebody anywhere you've not gone before. I know some people have just used their contacts in foreign countries to set things up before they get there, but they don't take the time to go in advance. A local contact will be more comfortable going into some places that may not be suitable for you to take your team. So as a leader, that's my number one tip is never take somebody somewhere you've not been to before.
Good. Yeah, one of the questions I ask anywhere that I go is if I'm thinking about bringing a group there, I just ask myself, would I bring a teenage girl here and leave her here for half an hour? And if I wouldn't, I probably wouldn't bring my group to this place.
Right.
But to go along with this comments of going to a place is wherever you're going, learn as much as you can about the congregation to figure out what kind of campaign you need to do. Maybe they need a building, and your campaign needs to be, we need a building this time. Next time we'll have another plan. What's the denominational demographic of the place? What are the types of Bible study problems that we're going to run into? And so those learning about where you're going so that you can have informed goals, it just goes hand in hand with that.
And the other thing I would say is if you're going to lead a campaign somewhere, don't do it if you're not committed to being a part of this congregation's lifespan. And don't just go one time and never come again, or even one or two or three times and be a flash in the pan. Because again, if it's not sustainable, it really puts that congregation in a hard spot, because expectations and desire for them, because this is their lives, this is where they live, this is you're going into their homes in many cases, and that's significant. Imagine being treated that way, rather than just thinking, oh, we're just doing them a favor, and all favors are good. Well, that's not always true.
Yeah, I think, I find that one of the big mistakes is we act like we're on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And you can enjoy a country and the experience of the country, and often they'll want you to, but we have to go with the approach, I'm here to work. Now, if I get some time to shop, great, but I'm not here to shop. I'm here to do the Lord's work. So don't be on a vacation. So don't be a tourist, though you're going to take pictures or whatever, but just don't be a tourist. I find it's really important to let the local brethren take the lead. Okay, they'll try to put the gringos to the front, but one of the best things you can do in a campaign is to promote the locals. For some reason, there's this mentality that a preacher from the U.S. is more spiritual in a lot of the countries I go to than our preacher, okay? They know the Bible equally. They've been to schools, etc., but there's some reason. And so one of the things you can do is brag on the local preacher, brag on the local leaders, push them to the front, listen to them. Let them guide you and educate you on the country and on what to do, what not to do. I think those are some really big things. Make sure you have accountability procedures in place for your money and how all that money is going to be handled. Those are just some things that I have found helpful in going into countries, and just respect the local folks and respect the local culture. A big thing I have found is remember that a lot of our colloquialisms, a lot of our idioms, a lot of our stories don't translate.
Right.
And so I can vividly remember a young lady in Panama. I was staying at their house. It's the Lopez home in La Chorrera.
Yeah.
And so one of the girls was taking a class in English. She'd been taking it all through high school there in Panama. And so they were in this one class dealing with, unique phrases and idioms in the U.S. And she says, so I said, can I help you with it? She said, yeah, I'd love some help with my homework. So we sat around the kitchen table, and she said, so tell me, what does it mean that it's raining cats and dogs? And so I didn't even think about it. Is that literally cats and dogs falling from the sky? And I mean, she's a senior in high school. But you think about, we have phrases and that don't make sense. So what I found is if you've got a translator, you need to, first of all, try not to use phrases that are unique to our culture, and just speak in plain, simple language. And when you're working with your translator, make sure they know what stories you're going to try to tell and what passages you're going to use. And often they do not want to quote the Bible on the fly, because they're afraid if they don't quote it properly, the people in the audience who've got their Bibles open are going to say, you didn't translate it like the Reina Valera. They want to open their Bible and read it in their translation, not translate your English. So let them read it directly from the Bible their audience is using. Those are just some things that I found helpful. So before we wrap up, anything else?
One more thing going along with making sure that you're doing what you're there to do, but having time for downtime. Have an itinerary that go ahead and plan every hour of your time there. Because what you'll do is every day you'll say, okay, I know exactly what I'm doing today, and you have time planned for downtime.
Yes.
And that keeps you on track, because there are going to be days where you wake up and you're not going to want to do what's on your itinerary, but you're just going to do it.
Yes.
Because that's what you're there to do.
Yeah, I do think it's helpful because, people have to rest sometimes. And people will work hard if they've got a target. Okay, I get a break here, so I'm going to give it all I've got for 8 hours because I'm going to go to the waterfall.
And sometimes on my campaigns, sometimes people they push themselves too hard.
Yeah.
Let them have a few hours. Let them have as long as they need. They're there to work, and you can tell that's probably why they push themselves so hard. So have mercy on people that you take too.
Yeah, it's so there. I mean, we could talk for hours about all the different things that we could do. I would say before you leave a campaign, go on a campaign. And ask a lot of questions.
Watch how it's done.
But also be careful. insisting that you know how things ought to be done. I know that there are so many people who have great intentions and they think that, they've got great ideas and stuff like that. A lot of them have been tried and done or whatever. I know specifically when I am planning a campaign, or if somebody comes to me with a suggestion, I have one filter through which I filter suggestions. And that filter is it going to lead me to one more soul? If your idea is going to lead me to one more soul, let's do it.
Does it work? Yeah.
I'm going to give one last thing just for all the missionaries out there. Of course, in the work we do, Latin American missions, we don't have folks from the States who go live in Latin America. Our work is training locals to do the work, and then we support and facilitate them. But I've had lots of friends who've done mission work, who've gone from the States to the other countries. And I'm going to tell you that a lot of those feel like campaigns interrupt their work. So there is value in having a campaign team come. It can often help them generate contacts. It gives them bodies to do some things they can't do because of the size of the membership. It can do great things for the local congregation. But also, coming at a bad time of the year, coming when they've got other things going, not thinking about their schedule and their world, or when you have campaigns that just keep coming on back of each other, there's 5 different churches that know this preacher, so they all want to go to Cusco, Peru. And so what I've had a lot of guys say, I can't do my work because I'm entertaining all these gringos coming in. So remember, when you're choosing time, when you're choosing what you want to do, the goal is what's best for the local church. So when I'm trying to set up our future minister camps, I will say, maybe these times work best for me. You tell me what works for you. And we need to do it when it works best for you. Even if that means I can't go, I'll find somebody else to go and facilitate this. It has to work best for them, and we want to assist their work and not hurt them. So I know we could go on all night. I appreciate you guys taking the time to be here.
Absolutely.
Appreciate what you're doing for God's kingdom. I appreciate what you are doing for the kingdom of God, and I know a lot of you are involved in mission in other countries, and I thought maybe tonight's episode would give you some things to think about. Just be faithful. Know that you are an instrument in the hands of God, and there will be people in heaven because of you. So don't quit. Don't give up. Don't give in. You're making a difference. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Ministry Matters That Matter.
And you're making a difference too.
Appreciate you guys very much.